Hey guys, it's Dahlia Thomas, and I'm going to show you how I made my Liara T'Soni headpiece. You see it? It's a little bit messed up from the last time I wore it. I didn't wipe all the makeup off because it's a pain in the butt. But anyway, I also didn't tape the process of me putting the Ultra Cal 30 onto the sculpt because it's very messy and I did not want to get any plaster on my computer, so I didn't film that. But I do have photos, so it's going to be a little less descriptive. I have to give a very big special thanks to Emma Bellish and the Mad Masker and Joshua Tripp for either giving me the headcast or helping me online in the middle of the night with discussions and questions, or just uploading a tutorial, because most of them have done that multiple times. So thank you so much. I'm not the genius behind any of this type of shenanigan going on in this video. It's all them. I'm just making a video telling you what I did. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to click in the description below and see the link to my Facebook page. I generally respond to a lot of people. So what I did was I started out with my head cast that was just my head and some plaster, and this way I can get an exact measurement of my scalp so the Asari head can only fit to me and nobody else. What I did afterwards was I got my head sculpt together and I formed the tentacles with some pieces of aluminum foil as well as duct tape to hold it in place. What I would strongly suggest is doing an exact replica in aluminum foil before you start sculpting, because you'll save some time, and in this tutorial you will see exactly why you should probably do that. The spacing of the tentacles were off by a lot. The tentacle on the lower right side was completely lopsided and I couldn't get it right, so I ended up taking it all apart again. This is about 6 hours into making it. I don't know why I do this hobby, but whatever. Anyway, so I am redoing the tentacles again because they are way too damn long, and I am redoing the internal structure at the same time. There's my friend Christina. She's very weird. Just ignore her. I told her I was filming her and it's gonna be fast forwarded times 20, so she was playing around in the background trying to be weird about it. And now I'm back in my apartment, so there's no more interruptions of friends talking to me. I removed my couch cushion because I do not want to get any clay on it, so my couch is hideous, but just please ignore the couch. So right now I am strengthening up the head tails and putting clay underneath so that I can lower the tentacles, I guess, and so they'll be supported by a clay structure holding it. I'm also adding more build to the head tails to create a crease that you see in between each tentacle. Here I noticed one side was a little bit lopsided, so I ripped it off and I redid it because I'm a perfectionist. You want to make sure to use Vaseline so you can smooth out all the cracks and lines. This way you get a very smooth piece, so when you add scales you have no cracks. And as you can see, that side's a little bit prominent, but it's okay because I'm going to shave it down and blend it. So it's probably been about a week since I've been messing around with the tentacles and trying to get them right. So right now I am making the forehead seem a lot smoother by adding another layer of clay. Right now I am adding the veins onto the side of the Asari head. At this point I think it's about 9 days working on this. And now you're starting to see a little bit more of the Asari head thing going on now. We're getting somewhere. Cat fight! So right now I am done doing the tentacle pieces for now because I'm just so fed up with working with those, and I am starting to do the back tentacle pieces, and I am currently looking back at the laptop to see a reference photo of an Asari's head. And what I have noticed is that a lot of the Asaris have their own unique tentacle shapes and sizes and gill slits, which is really detailed and pretty damn cool for BioWare to do. So right now I'm also fuck that word. I am sticking the clay shits onto the other clay shits by using Vaseline. I went to college. So as you can see, I'm trying to attach the middle tentacle onto the headpiece. It's a little bit difficult because the shape is kind of like a pizza, but yet it can't be flat, so it still has to be in the round. And at the same time, I have to round it out without flattening it, but make it flat on the top to stick, and then get the excess clay from underneath to make it look basically in the round, which is kind of tough. And as far as the back tentacles go, I'm quite happy with the way they are. They do need to be pulled out and rounded out when I'm ready to do the final touches, but as you can see over on here, I'm starting to work on the gill slits, and I noticed that Liara and Samara and Aria, wow, I almost forgot her name, Aria, they all have different gill slit sizes, so really, if you're going to make it a different Asari that's not Liara, you really want to look at a photo of the size of gills and the shapes that they have. Some of them have 6 slits, some of them have 5. Liara has 5, and it's really hard to get in there. This is probably one of the biggest key moments of making the Asari head where you need to have the most patience. What I strongly would suggest to you if you aren't really familiar with clay carving, or if you are and you really want a tip, put some Vaseline on the tip of your tool when you're trying to get in those hard to reach places, and after you're done with each scrape, wipe it with a napkin just to get the excess clay off, because you will get clay pieces stuck in between and it'll be all gunky, and you want your seam and the gill slit to be as clean as possible, because once you start trying to smooth it out, you'll flatten the detail that you're trying to achieve. And now an awkward angle of me trying to add the back scaling, or I don't know what those are. They're like little slits. Stuck some other veins or scales or divots. I don't know what these pieces are called, but I'm going to call them thingy-majigs. So they're called thingy-majigs. Alright, so I dipped my wooden smoothing tool into the petroleum jelly, and now I'm smoothing the seams together. This is just the way I do things. When I get a little bit tired of working on the same piece, I'll maneuver around the head and I'll smooth out certain cracks. This is just me taking a break from working on the piece that I've been working on for a couple of hours now. I don't know why. I'm very ADD about the way I work. I basically spend a lot of time smoothing the Asari head out after I do one thing. I don't know why I do that. It's just a quirk I have, so that's okay. So I started working on the gill slits on the other side. Once again, there's 5 slits. It's very, very aggravating if you screw it up, and I did screw it up. Actually, before this take, I discovered that the entire left side was wrong, and I didn't want to remove it all after I just worked so hard, so I actually cut out the slit, removed it, put it back, and stuck it on there with Vaseline. So you can do surgery. This is a very forgiving process, so take advantage of it. Another cool trick that I've found from Emma Bellish is taking a spoon and dipping it in really hot water, and then dipping it into Vaseline will actually help you get a smoother seam. You can also use a clay kidney, but I couldn't buy just the kidney at Michael's. They made me buy an entire pack of clay work. But also, not only that, you can see that I've basically finished the back. I'm just adding the final touches before I start putting scales on. There are several tricks you can use to getting the texture for the Asari. I know Emma did a styrofoam Sculpey clay stamp, but as you can see, the purple on the top of the headpiece, I tried doing the Sculpey stamp and I hated it. I didn't like the way it came out, so I got a 5-pound bag of onions and I just took the netting off, and I discovered that if you pull the netting in a certain way, you can make the scales larger, and if you squeeze the netting, you can get smaller scales. You can get a wide range of different types of textures by using this netting. So what I found best for me is to take the netting and put it on top of the clay, and then take one of your paintbrushes and basically paint Vaseline on top of it, and then scrape it into the clay using a wooden clay tool, and then putting more Vaseline, and then ripping it off like you would wax an eyebrow. So it's worked a lot. I've used at least 3 different variations of texture for the Asari. As you notice, the scales get larger on top of the tentacle pieces and get gradually smaller towards the forehead. I was able to achieve that with not only the netting, but also using a type of sandpaper when I was done getting my cast out. What I do for the in-between of the crevices is I take the netting and I ball it up just to give it more texture, because there's more of a gradient value down there. I ball the netting up and I just stick it on there, and I pretty much get the same results. But you want to be very wary of the fact that not the entire Asari head is the same scale texture. They have different variations going all across the head. It's pretty intense. So now you should be ready to cast your clay sculpt. You're never going to see it in this final form again, so go ahead and give it a hug and douse it in Krylon Crystal Clear, because that's going to be your mold release. That's what's worked for me. It came out perfect. Be prepared, because this process is extremely messy. So get a drop cloth, put it on the floor, and I divided the sculpt with water-based clay from the front forehead, and I basically made, I guess, like a blockage so that it wouldn't seep down onto my face sculpt. But I divided the cast in half. You want to smooth it out with a paintbrush and some water, as well as a clay kidney or an old credit card that I had sitting around. Make sure that the mold wall is completely seamless next to the sculpt. You want it to be basically like tight as you can possibly get it. Those 6 little dots on my clay mold are called registration keys. Each side will have bumps on it, so I can interlock the 2 sides together and know that they're all in the right spot. This way I can get an even cast. I'm also mixing my Ultra Cal 30 so I can begin the plaster process. So here I am adding the first layer of Ultra Cal 30. This is important to get the entire thing coated in Ultra Cal, because this is your beauty coat. If you don't get it all over the place onto your sculpt, you're not going to get the texture and scales that you work so hard to achieve. This is about, I think, the second layer of Ultra Cal. I waited 30 minutes between each coat. I did about 3 layers of just Ultra Cal, and then I do 3 layers of cheesecloth soaked in Ultra Cal. I think this was about the this is probably the last ultracal layer that I did that was just strictly ultracal before I pulled the cheesecloth out. Now I'm adding some cheesecloth cut up in various shapes between small, medium, and large. Cheesecloth will help strengthen your mold so it won't be prone to breaking. I made sure to get the cheesecloth all over the place so the entire sculpt is not recognizable anymore. I think this is about the last layer of cheesecloth that I did on this side. I'm gonna not show you what I did to the other side because it's basically just about the same thing, but there's a little variant of difference. But yeah, you get it. Both sides I did. I left the plaster pieces to sit overnight, and I came back and took a screwdriver and a mallet and I gently popped the mold in half, and I was happy because it came out clean and the plaster did not break, so I was very satisfied. So my entire piece came out pretty clean when I cleaned out all the clay and the headpiece out of it, and I went ahead and cleaned it with those compressed air cans as well as rubbing alcohol just to remove all the gunk and everything from it. But it basically took me about 3 or 4 hours to remove all of this. So now I have my 2 clean molds. So what I did was I took my silicone paintbrush and dipped it in my 407 latex, and I wiped it all over the inside of both halves of the mold, and I let it sit for about 30 minutes before I conjoined the 2 together. This is important to get in all the crevices because, once again, this is going to be your beauty layer, and you're going to grab all that texture and all the scales that you work so hard putting in, and it'll show up in your cast. So 30 minutes have passed and I put my mold together using those registration keys so they interlock. I then clamped it and tied it tighter with a belt, and I put it in a 5-gallon bucket just to hold it up. I then added about 10 to 20 layers, 30 minutes waiting for each layer to dry, and then let it sit for about 48 to 58 hours. You can let it dry longer, but this is the time that is very frustrating. So it's been about 56 hours and I've let it dry. I used some baby powder to get it out without having the latex stick to itself. It's very, very, very frustrating and very nerve-wracking because all this time that you put into it can screw this mold up if it's still not dry yet. I had actually one more day before I had to go and get ready for MegaCon, so I was very scared. This is my face actually being relieved that the one half of the mold came off clean. So I was having some major suspense of if the other side was going to come out or not. I had a happy ending. This is my face exactly after I took the piece out of my mold. Man, I was so happy. But I mean, there were some minor problems, like there were a couple holes, but it's no big deal. You can patch them back up, but it's not devastating. So the top left piece is right when I removed it from the mold after I sanded down the seam line with a Dremel and used some 220 sandpaper just to lightly get some scales to gradually blend into where my forehead is. Not only that, I gave this a bath with some vinegar and warm water just to get rid of the baby powder from removing it from the mold. The top right is my base coat of PAX. PAX is acrylic paint mixed with a 50-50 ratio of prosthetic adhesive. Prosthetic adhesive helps the paint stick to your piece without having the paint chip off when you're moving around. It just helps it stick. Once you have your prosthetic adhesive, you can just use standard acrylic paint right afterwards and you're free to go. I used an airbrush for the rest of the way after I did my PAX piece. So the bottom left is my secondary coat and the bottom right is my finally finished product. And yep, thank you for watching my transitional video. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message on Facebook. I know this wasn't very descriptive, but it sure as hell is going to show you what you're going to have to go through if you want to make your own Asari headpiece. And thank you so much for watching.